The American Civil War, which spanned from 1861 to 1865, was a pivotal conflict that not only shaped the course of United States history, but also had profound implications for the nation's identity, governance, and social structure. The war was primarily fought over the contentious issues of slavery and states' rights, with the southern states advocating for the right to own slaves and the northern states opposing the expansion of slavery into new territories. This fundamental disagreement culminated in a brutal and bloody conflict that would determine the fate of slavery and the very Union itself. The seeds of conflict were sown long before the first shots were fired at Fort Sumter in April 1861. The United States was deeply divided along regional lines, with the industrialized North benefiting from a rapidly growing economy based on manufacturing and the agrarian South relying heavily on slavery for its cotton plantations and other agricultural pursuits. The Missouri Compromise of 1820 and the Compromise of 1850 attempted to balance the power between slave and free states, but the peace they brokered was tenuous and ultimately failed to address the underlying issues. The election of Abraham Lincoln in 1860 was the final straw for many Southern states. Lincoln, a member of the newly formed Republican Party, which opposed the expansion of slavery into new territories, was viewed by the South as a direct threat to the institution of slavery. Following his election, 11 Southern states seceded from the Union and formed the Confederate States of America. This act of secession was considered illegal by Lincoln and the Northern states, setting the stage for war. The early battles of the war, including the First Battle of Bull Run and the Battle of Shiloh, were chaotic and bloody, demonstrating that the conflict would be longer and more devastating than initially anticipated by both sides. The Union's strategy included blockading southern ports and taking control of the Mississippi River to divide the Confederacy and cut off their supplies. The Confederacy, under the leadership of President Jefferson Davis and General Robert E. Lee, aimed to defend its territory long enough to force the North to accept Southern independence. One of the turning points of the war was the issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation by President Lincoln in 1863. This bold move declared all slaves in Confederate-held territory to be free and shifted the war aims of the North from merely preserving the Union to also abolishing slavery. This act provided the moral impetus for the war and allowed African Americans to enlist in the Union Army, adding further manpower to the Northern cause. The brutality of the war reached its peak in battles such as Gettysburg and Vicksburg in 1863, which were pivotal Union victories that turned the tide against the Confederates. Gettysburg, the war's bloodiest battle, resulted in over 50,000 casualties and is often regarded as the high water mark of the rebellion. The Union victory at Vicksburg, meanwhile, secured control of the Mississippi River and effectively split the Confederacy in two. In the final stages of the war, General Ulysses S. Grant took command of the Union armies and began a total war campaign aimed at destroying the Confederates' capacity to fight. His relentless push through the heart of the South, culminating in the capture of Richmond, Virginia, the capital of the Confederacy, in April 1865, marked the effective end of the conflict. Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrendered to Grant at Appomattox Courthouse shortly thereafter. The aftermath of the war was a period known as Reconstruction, during which the Southern states were reintegrated into the Union, and efforts were made to rebuild the devastated Southern economy and society. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution were passed, abolishing slavery, granting citizenship rights to all born or naturalized in the United States, and protecting voting rights regardless of race, respectively. However, the legacy of the Civil War and Reconstruction left enduring racial tensions and divisions that would continue to affect American society for generations. The promises of Reconstruction were undermined by the subsequent rise of Jim Crow laws and segregation policies that institutionalized racial discrimination and disenfranchisement. Today, the American Civil War is remembered not just as a struggle for the Union and against slavery, but as a defining moment in the formation of modern American identity. It continues to be a subject of extensive study and debate, reflecting on the themes of unity, freedom, and human rights that still resonate in contemporary American political discourse. The war, in essence, was a crucible that forged the United States into a new nation, forever changed by the trials and tribulations it endured.